You are listening to Repetitions with Daisy and Jack. Today we are giving you real, science-backed research with zero ads for supplements. On today's episode, we are talking about why jumping into a cold plunge after your workout might actually be working against your muscle growth goals. I did cold plunges after every leg day for 6 months. Felt like I was doing something serious. Looked exactly the same. Turns out I was paying to tell my muscles not to grow.
And now, there's a meta-analysis that confirms it. Cold water immersion after resistance training produces a statistically significant negative effect on muscle hypertrophy and strength. That's not a fringe finding. That's the field landing.
So let's talk about how we got here. Because the cold plunge did not arrive as a gym tool. It arrived as a personality.
Wim Hof is where the mainstream credibility starts. His documented feats, the branded method, and then a real study, published in a serious journal, showing that practitioners of his technique could voluntarily modulate their immune response to an endotoxin challenge. That's a legitimate finding.
And that study is real. But
it was 24 people. It combined cold exposure with breathwork and meditation. So you cannot isolate what the cold alone did. And it measured an acute immune response in a controlled endotoxin setting, not whether recreational cold plunging makes you healthier. The distance between that study and the content it spawned is very large.
then the protocol content hit. Very specific numbers, temperatures, weekly minutes. And that level of specificity reads like science. Some of it is science. But what got buried was the timing question. Specifically, what happens when you get in the ice bath right after you lift?
That's where Roberts and colleagues come in. 12-week randomized controlled trial, 21 resistance-trained men, lower body strength training twice a week. After each session, one group did 10 minutes in cold water at 10 degrees Celsius.
The other group did 10 minutes of low-intensity cycling as active recovery. And after 12 weeks,
The active recovery group gained significantly more leg press strength, significantly more lean mass in the legs. And when the researchers took muscle biopsies, the cold group showed reduced satellite cell number and activity. Satellite cells are the myogenic stem cells that fuse with existing fibers to add myonuclei. That's the structural mechanism of real hypertrophic growth. The cold was suppressing it directly.
and they found the molecular evidence too. It wasn't just the outcome numbers.
Right. The biopsy data showed blunted phosphorylation of P70S6K and 4E-BP1, both downstream targets of mTORC1, which is the master regulator of muscle protein synthesis. The cold was interrupting the molecular handshake that initiates the repair and remodel response in the hours after training.
So the mechanism and the outcome matched. That's not always how it goes in this space.
It's not. And then the meta-analysis, published more recently, multiple RCTs pooled, confirmed it. Statistically significant attenuation of both hypertrophy and strength in the cold immersion conditions versus controls. Worth noting that Brad Schoenfeld is a co-author on that paper. He has spent a career trying to figure out how to maximize muscle growth. When he signs off on a finding that says cold water immersion blunts gains, that carries weight.
The man is not trying to take your ice bath away for fun.
The meta-analysis also flagged something important about pattern. The attenuation effect appears most pronounced when CWI is applied consistently after every session. One post-lift cold plunge probably isn't catastrophic. Doing it every training day across a 12-week block, that's where the cumulative cost shows up in your measurements.
Which is exactly how it gets used. Every session, part of the routine, feels like discipline.
And the soreness reduction is real. That's the trap. A Cochrane review supports cold water immersion for reducing delayed onset muscle soreness compared to passive rest. So you get in the ice bath, your legs feel better the next day, and you conclude it's working. It is working. It's just working on the wrong target.
I want to be fair to the use case where it actually makes sense, because this isn't a total write-off.
Competition blocks. Multiple events in close succession where soreness management matters more than long-term adaptation accumulation. That's where professional sports teams have historically used it. And that's a defensible trade. You're consciously prioritizing short-term recovery over long-term hypertrophy because the context demands it. If you're running back-to-back matches or games across a week, the calculus changes.
That's the right tool, wrong job problem. The tool works. Most people using it aren't in that job.
And then there are the secondary claims: testosterone, mood, longevity. The norepinephrine spike from cold exposure is real and measurable. Studies consistently find acute increases in the 200 to 300% range. That is a genuine physiological response.
So where does the claim fall apart?
At the word lasting, an acute hormonal spike during and shortly after exposure is not the same as a durable change to your neurochemical baseline or your endocrine environment. On testosterone specifically, the evidence is thin and contradictory. Some acute studies show a transient post-cold elevation. Others show no effect. There is no long-term RCT data supporting cold plunging as a testosterone intervention. None. On longevity, no human RCT data at all.
The associations people cite come from epidemiological work on populations like Nordic winter swimmers, which cannot establish causation and confounds cold exposure with exercise, social behavior, and selection effects. The healthy person who swims in cold water in January is probably doing a lot of other things right.
Almost certainly. And I will give it this much: voluntarily tolerating cold is a genuine stress inoculation behavior. The psychological resilience argument is not nothing, but it's also available through other uncomfortable practices. Hard training does it. Cold showers do a version of it. You don't need a $5,000 tub to access discomfort.
The tub does look good on the deck, though.
I have processed a significant number of cold plunge Instagram posts. The aesthetic is consistent.
Okay, so what does someone actually do with this? If your primary goal is muscle size and strength, and for most people listening it is, the rule is simple. No cold immersion within roughly 4 hours of a resistance training session. That's where the acute mTORC1 activation window sits. That's when you're most vulnerable to blunting the signal.
Flag on that. The 4-hour boundary is mechanistically derived, not RCT validated as a specific cutoff. The acute signaling studies on mTOR activity post-training support the general window, but we don't have a trial that directly tests cold immersion at 4 hours versus 5 hours and shows a clean difference. It's a reasonable practical inference, not a proven threshold.
Noted. But the direction is clear. Further from the training session is better if you're going to do it at all.
If you want the acute alertness effect in the morning, cold exposure on a rest day is fine.
Or a cold shower. The evidence on cold showers, directly versus full immersion, is thin, but mechanistically, the same concern applies if you take a cold shower immediately after lifting. The effect is probably attenuated compared to full immersion, but you're still activating the same vasoconstriction pathway. Morning rest day. Cold shower. You still get the norepinephrine response. You're not touching your training adaptation. That's the swap.
The Roberts trial used 10 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes. The literature generally works in the 10 to 15 degree range. There's a plausible hypothesis that warmer cold immersion, say 15 to 18 degrees, might blunt less while still producing some peripheral benefit. That gradient has not been tested in a well-powered trial, so I'd hold that loosely.
The honest version of this is, it's not a scam. It does things. It just does the wrong things at the wrong time for most of the people doing it.
The data on this is as consistent as you will find for any recovery intervention. A 12-week RCT with molecular mechanism confirmed. A meta-analysis replicating the direction and significance across multiple studies. Both strength and hypertrophy attenuated. The evidence only gets cleaner as more trials are added, not murkier.
If you're lifting to grow, the ice bath is not your recovery tool. It is your interference.
There's a version of this where the cold plunge makes you feel like you're doing the most extreme thing in your recovery protocol, when what you've actually done is pay several $100s to blunt your gains. That's a very specific kind of expensive, and the receipt doesn't have to say that on it. And that's our show. Thanks for joining us on Repetitions. If you liked the podcast, you can show our team some love with 5 stars and a follow. See you next time.
Grab news. Thomas.